Hi, it's Marianne of MW's Designs. I've really been enjoying the late summer and almost fall days we've been having here in Saskatchewan. It's been really nice weather to be out in the yard or wherever. I have been out looking at some of the leaves. They're just starting to turn, and the prettiest ones are on our gooseberry bush. The leaves have so many colors. I'm going to be making cards with watercolor painting, and I've done some in a horizontal format, and I'm going to do some in a vertical format. And I've used odd numbers, 3 for the vertical and 5 for the horizontal, just because odd numbers of items make a really good composition. So I'm going to show you some of the leaves that I just collected a little while ago, and when they're fresh they have the really vibrant colors, the reds, and then I like the mixtures of the yellow and the orange, and some of them have a little bit of green in them too. So I'm going to set these aside and I'll show you how I make the leaf shapes. It's a really easy method. If you remember from when you were a kid, you might have done leaf rubbings. Well, that's what I'm going to do, and that will get my shape very accurate in an easy way. So I'm using the side edge of my pencil just over top of the leaf and trying to get the edges of the leaf shape. And you don't want to press too hard, but hard enough so that you can start to see those lines. So I'm getting the outside edge, and then I'm going to try and get some of the veins inside the leaf. There, that's coming now. You can see them better. And so you just do that for all of your leaves. And I'll set this one aside. I have one that's completed. And there they are. I'm going to be using graphic paper to transfer my leaf shapes to my watercolor paper. And I think I have showed you this in other videos. One side is dark and one side is light, and the dark side is the side you want to use to go down on your watercolor paper so that the graphite will make your shape. I want this kind of in the middle so that I will have room to write a sentiment either at the top or the bottom. And I'm just going to attach it with some large paper clips to hold it in place. And I'm just putting them at the top so that you'll be able to lift this up when you're in process and be able to see how your transfer is going. Okay, so I need my pencil. Oh, I was going to say you can use these graphite sheets quite a number of times. You can see this one is well worn, but it still works quite well. I paid about $6 for 2 sheets, 9 inches by 12. So it really is an economical way to do this. So I'm starting in a logical way. I find that if I do it consistently for each of my shapes, then I make sure not to miss any lines. So the first thing I'm doing on this one is going around the edge the outside edge of my leaf. Then I like to go down the main vein and then down into the stem. It has a little notch at the end. Then I go back and do the side veins, and then on the right side and the left side. If you have some kind of order, then you will find that you don't miss lines. And I'm just going to take a peek, and there. And so I would continue going and do the other leaves. But I have one completed, so I'm just going to bring that over here. The next step is I'm going to do background, and I am very fond of blues, so I like to do a blue background. And this is just, I usually have several of these little plastic containers for my water. I've got clear water, and then this was from some blue painting that I did, so it's very dilute. I'm using a flat brush. It's a number 6, and it's about 1/2 inch wide. So starting at the top, I'm just going to go across here and get it all wet. I don't know why I like to do this with the used watercolor water, but I do, and I can see what's going on because there's a little bit of that pigment in there to make it blue. And this brush works well if you stand it on its edge. You can get into those little crevices without going on parts that you don't want to. And then when you want to do a flat part, you've got a fairly big space of brush to go a little bit faster where you have more room. And you can go right over those stems. And just make sure, not too wet, but that everything gets covered. Because using this wet in wet technique, when I apply a little more pigment, it's only going to stay on the wet part. It won't go on to any of the leaves that are dry. So now I have my paint that is a mixture of ultramarine blue and viridian hue, and I've already mixed it. It's still a little bit watery, but it's not as watery as my first application. So I just start at the top again and go across. And because it's wet in wet, it's going to flow, and you won't have any lines that are obvious. You can go in different directions if you want. That can kind of help too. You'll just get a nice, it won't be a completely uniform blend, but you'll get a fairly nice blend that looks really good in the finished product. So again, I use the brush on its edge to get into the little crevices. And you can see the paint is just doing its thing, smoothing out. And if there's the odd little white spot, that is okay too, because that's one of the charms of watercolor painting, is that sometimes those little white spots add a bit of interest. Okay, so we're almost there. Get into the little crevices, and then when you've gone around all those little areas, then you can get a little more paint, and you might even have to add more water from your little container. It started to dry at the bottom there. Okay, and I'm just going to set this aside. Oh, no, there's one more thing before we set it aside. Almost forgot. I want to add my shadows while the paper is still damp, and that way the shadows will kind of spread and blend out towards their edges. So to make my shadow paint, I've got some of my palette here worked out for the leaves later, but I'm going to show you how I do the mixture for the shadow. And I want to have a harmonious gray, so I am using the colors that are in my palette for my leaves. And I learned this from Lindsay Weirich, and I'll put a link to her channel below. I have learned so much from her, and if you haven't checked her out, I really encourage you to do so. So to make my shadow color, let's get a little squirt of water here, and I'm going to use some red or some blue, and then maybe wipe my brush off a little bit of red, and a little bit of my yellow ochre. Okay, I think it needs a little more red. It's not really gray yet. So it's kind of fun to mix these colors. And you learn a lot about color properties by doing this. Okay, I think we need a little more ultramarine right from the pan. Okay, what are we getting there? Okay, it's maybe not quite as gray as I want it. Maybe a little more yellow ochre. Anyway, you can just keep working with it till you get the color that you want. Okay, and I want it fairly dilute. I don't want very much on my brush. So then without touching where I have already painted, and definitely don't drop your brush, but you can pick up those spots and it doesn't really hurt too much. Okay, so I want to, I'm going to say my light is coming from this direction going that way. So, no, that's too much paint. And of course it will dry lighter, but you still don't want to have too much dark color get into those crevices, because of course that's where there definitely would be shadows. And I know right now it still looks like it's kind of dark, but I'm going to show you what to do to soften those edges. Get in the crevices. So go all the way around where you think the shadows might be. I'm still learning how to apply shadows. It's something you have to do by looking at actual real-world objects and using that to help you learn where shadows go. So I'm going to dry my brush off and then go along the edges, and that smooths and blends those edges out into the background. Okay. And it also if your brush is dry, you can lift off any excess that where you think you might have got a little too much. And I definitely feel I have a little too much in some spots. So just keep working all the way around in there. I definitely have too much over here. So I'll keep working on this one. But you can see that it has spread out quite a bit. Okay, and lastly, I'm going to do just a little touch on the stems, because they would have a bit of a shadow too. And again, lift off and smooth out. And when you're fairly happy with it, you can leave that to dry. So set it aside, and I have one that is already dry. Get rid of some of my splotches. So there are my 3 leaves. And I think I will use my actual leaves to help me with how I want to do the colors. I think you can see those. And now I'll tell you about my palette. And I'm using a separate brush for each color just so I don't have to clean the brushes in between. So I have a red, and this is alizarin crimson red, and I like it because it's a very nice bright red. And then I have sap green, and I didn't mix anything with that, either of those ones. And then I have yellow ochre. No, that's not my yellow ochre brush. This one is. Okay, yellow ochre. And then I had some what is it? Burnt sienna. Okay, burnt sienna that I put over here. And it's already kind of an orange color. But I have added a little bit of the yellow ochre to it, and it just makes a really nice orange color. Okay, so I'm going to start with my red. And even though these are kind of faded, I can use them to help me decide on the colors. Okay, there's going to be red here, and red in this one. And you could spend as much or little time as you need to get into all the little crevices. And that one's more yellow, so I'm not going to put any red in that. Okay, that's a reddish spot. Then I'm going to use some of the sap green. And okay, that one had before it lost its vibrancy, it actually had more green there. And then this one has green at the bottom also. Okay, if you do something like that, just blot it right away. Okay, now I'm going to use some of the yellow ochre. Okay, let's do this one because it had quite a bit of yellow in it. And I don't even mind if there is a little bit of the color going into the blue background. Again, it's an effective watercolor that's quite nice. Okay, before this red dries, I'm going to get some of the yellow ochre to blend in with it and the green. Okay, that one probably has more red in it. And, oh, you know what? I think I will put a little bit of red. I noticed some just in certain spots. So, just a little bit here and there. Maybe a little bit coming down here. And I just love the way the paint flows, and it makes a very natural effect on the leaves. Okay, what do I need here? Maybe a little bit more red here too. So you just can keep going and work at it till you're satisfied. I might even put a little bit of the burnt sienna mixed with the yellow ochre. Let's see. Maybe, okay, a little bit there. I'm not sure. I'm just going by instinct. I don't really have a plan. And of course, leaves are a really forgiving subject because, of course, leaf shapes and leaf colors vary in all kinds of different ways. So nothing that you're putting on your leaves is wrong, because there could be a leaf out there somewhere that is like that. Okay, so you could dry it and add more details if you want to. I kind of like the way my transfer lines stand out and show what the leaf is like. So I'm going to do the stems with just a little bit of that burnt sienna, just to give them a tiny bit of color. Okay, there's maybe a little bit too much in that one. Okay, I could come back and fix that up later. It's just gonna, no, it's still okay. So, I think that is finished for now, and in my next video, I will show you what I do to turn them into cards, and I maybe have some other ideas to work with too, plus the sentiment either at the top or the bottom, maybe some finishing little touches, I'm not quite sure. So if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up, and if you have a comment, you can put it below. And I guess I'll see you in my next video. Thanks very much for watching.